Good morning. Ancient Warrior here. We're going to continue talking about barbarians at the gates. So here's what I want to do. Let's do a comparison of another great society, the Romans. You know, they lasted, I saw a write-up the other day, they lasted about 1,000 years. The United States, 240 something years. And we're making the same mistakes as the Romans did. See, what happened was the Roman government went out to conquer the world. The American government, after World War II, went out to give democracy to the world. Sound familiar? We've been tied up in needless battles. Declared wars, undeclared wars, police actions. We've had programs where our drug interdiction teams, our military is being used for drug interdiction. You know, the biggest problem we have today is we have politicians who don't think. They don't think long term. So, folks, let's talk about what's been going on. After World War II, our government went out and said the domino effect's going to happen in Korea, in the two Koreas, so we went to war with North Korea. Until 2018, we have had a state of war with North Korea. We now are getting the bodies or the remains back of the men, some of the men who died in that war from 1950 to 1953. You know, I hate to say it, but Joseph McCarthy, he was right. Only he was looking in the wrong places. Joseph McCarthy's biggest problem was he didn't realize where the enemies were. He went to Hollywood, and he was right about some of those Hollywood people. They were communist. They were actively working against our country. And if you don't believe me, look at some of the movies that are coming out right now. So, the barbarians that we're talking about are those moderately educated educators. You know, I saw a piece back, I guess it was Saturday night. They was talking about this Berkeley College professor who had a length of chain and a bike lock at the end of it. And if somebody was saying something he didn't like, he'd just walk up and whack them. He was found not guilty of the crimes of assault many times over. Now let's talk about, a lot of you have parents that came from various places, south of the border, east of our borders, west of our borders. A few even tried to escape Canada, so north of our borders too. Your parents thought it was important to become U.S. citizens. Your grandparents, your great-grandparents thought it was important to become a citizen of this country, to give all of your dedication to this country. It goes back to the old business adage. The first generation builds, second generation maintains, third and fourth generation loses it all. That's what we're doing right now. Since World War II, my father's generation, my generation, my father's generation built the prosperity we live in today. They're called the greatest generation for a reason. My generation maintained it. But through the time of maintaining it, we had a lot of people who were starting to look at socialism as a cure-all instead of a disease. It's like infecting somebody with the measles because they have a cold. Not a smart move. They started thinking socialism was a good idea. Go ask the folks in Venezuela, or in Bolivia, or in North Korea, China, any place that they don't have a capitalistic form of government. Folks, if we're not careful, we're going to end up destroying this country. People like Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid, Barney Frank, Schumer, Mark Warner. As long as their group's in power, they're great and happy. But because things are rocking along now very nicely, they're telling you that Mr. Trump's bad because of this or that. His administration's bad because this or that. Used to be a time in this country when we could argue and fight about politics, but after the election we all went back to being friends, and that's not happened this time. So, folks, what we need to do is we need to start working to come together. How do we do that? We need to start remembering that we're all Americans. That at the end of the day, when we're through fighting and arguing, that we're Americans. We also don't want to do like ancient Rome did, but we did it. Is bringing in foreign mercenaries or foreigners, training them to be soldiers, and promising them citizenship if they spend X amount of time in the military. And then for the most minor of infractions, it'd be removed and they'd be deported. And believe me, that has been happening, especially under the Obama administration. Mr. Trump's going to have to deal with that. And I'm sure he will before too much longer. But we're doing everything like the Romans did it. We're not educating our children to the highest form. You know, right now we have high school and college kids that can barely read. And if it wasn't for spell check on their phones, if it wasn't for calculators on their phones, they couldn't do the work. We've become so dependent on technology. That's the other barbarian at the technology. So, with that being said, folks, have a good night, be blessed, and thank you. And if you like what I'm talking about, make comments down in the lower box. Give me a thumbs up. And if you don't, give me a thumbs up anyway. And just tell me you didn't like what I was talking about. But with that being said, folks, be blessed, and we will see you later. I'm the Ancient Warrior, and this is Free America.